WWT presents Experts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of WWT Experts. I'm your host, Matthew Coble, and today I'm delighted to introduce two experts from Worldwide Technology in this episode of our four-part series about the energy and utility industry and how organizations in that space approach stuff like operational technology, lifecycle management, security, and today's topic, artificial intelligence. Joining me are Adam Nathan, who leads Worldwide Technology's energy and utility practice. He's worked with our clients on business and technology strategies for over 8 years. And as I've gotten to know him, I found him to be really a highly analytical and sort of intellectually curious guy, and he's very passionate about modernizing the energy and utility industries to achieve transformative business and societal outcomes and impacts. Also with us is Rich Kroffel. He's a Chief Technology Advisor with Worldwide Technology and has a proven track record driving transformation across multiple industries, including high technology, healthcare, financial services, and of course, the energy and utility sector. Today, he'll be bringing his expertise in artificial intelligence to our discussion, and as he often does with our clients, when helping them improve their profitability, drive really great efficiency, and create market differentiation and those great business outcomes that we all see. Gentlemen, thank you for coming today. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Matt.
Cool. Well, let's jump right in. So, first question, Adam, let's let you open here. Where do you see energy and utilities organizations in the AI adoption curve that's all over the marketplace that we're all seeing today?
Well, I think for utilities, it's important to put them in context. I think a lot of industries, you have businesses running to go invest and innovate and get an edge on their competitors. This is an industry that makes generally slow, meaningful, regular progress towards a better future. But it really is a plodding effort that is every year you look to improve. And it's an industry that works together towards that end. It's also not an industry that takes on a whole bunch of risk, because none of us really, the idea of move fast and break things, it wouldn't be good with the electrical grid. So I think there are some really meaningful areas where utilities are leaning in and looking towards AI. They work very closely with the vendor community to build some of these that are sustainable, that solve meaningful problems today, as well as setting themselves up to transform in the future. I think broadly speaking, executives across the technology side and the business side recognize that whereas there have been hype cycles before about different technology that may not have stuck as well, this one's different, and this is something that's going to be necessary to meet the goals of a green, a carbon neutral grid that can survive and thrive in an environment where climate disasters are more regular and more severe, and the generation side of electricity is more variable. The demand side of electricity is more variable. So in all of that, it's going to take much more intelligence in the grid, and that's going to necessitate AI. But as utilities always are, it is a journey to get there, and they're really at the beginning, like so many are.
All right, well, thanks, Adam. So, Rich, what's your point of view on this?
As Adam said, I think, the utilities industry is really starting on this journey. There are examples where they've done things that have enabled their business in kind of more traditional AI type modes, but they're really looking to a partner ecosystem to help transform their business and ultimately be catalysts to transform the industry. As an example, a couple of the major California utilities recently visited NVIDIA and their campus to really explore solutions and opportunities to really use partners like NVIDIA to help them transform. Additionally, there's a 2024 Edison Electric Institute conference that Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, is actually speaking at. So more than ever, as Adam talked about, they're looking at this not as just a technology enabler for their business, but truly a business enabler. And it's probably the best example I can see where technology and business have to come together to really drive new outcomes for this industry.
Well, Rich, I know that there are a lot of ways that organizations are approaching AI for their businesses, but I'm curious, within this industry, how do we see clients experimenting with AI to reduce operating expenses in that approach?
Yeah, I think for many, they're looking at ways that they can make their workforce and particularly their field more efficient. So anything they can do to really help reduce the number of truck rolls, as an example. Every time they have to roll a truck out into the field, it costs them money. And there are several opportunities where a lot of those truck rolls can be done now remotely. So a lot of that happens with a lot of embedded devices that are now in the field that provide central intelligence, so they no longer have to go out to the field to actually essentially console into a lot of these devices to understand the current state of them, right? They can do that remotely now. So that's just one example, but really there are several examples in multiple areas of their business that they're looking to really drive that operational efficiency and ultimately reduce their operating expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, absolutely true. And I think as we look at solutions really needed for the space, they're turning to it. So 2018, California, there were some really horrible fires that cost a lot of homes, lives, and societal issues. There has been massive investment to go address that for the utilities to address it, and the frequency and severity of those has really come down because of it, to the point where 5 years ago, this was an existential threat to the utilities on the West Coast. And now it is still very much an issue that is being dealt with, but there is a plan. They feel like there's a plan. The challenge is that plan is very expensive and manually intensive. So are there ways that we can use AI? So a lot of utilities are doing things like flying drones along feeder lines and transmission lines to identify overgrown vegetation or towers where there's erosion in order to proactively identify issues and then prevent it without just a brute force manual effort of having people in the field walking the lines manually every day. It's more effective, it's lower cost, it brings greater reliability, greater safety, and better outcomes on the affordability for customers and to the shareholders of the investor-owned utilities. So it's a win all the way around. It requires this kind of technology to address, and then it requires scale of the infrastructure to capture not just the data, but we're talking about very large picture files and millions of them to build the models and then run them to effectively identify issues in the grid from them. So it's a massive effort, but the impact can be transformative to the utility and its ratepayers and shareholders.
Yeah, Adam, I totally agree. I think there are a lot of different use cases that they're exploring now. They're also starting to explore kind of generative AI use cases. A lot of the use cases traditionally have been more traditional AI, but now they're really leveraging and experimenting with large language models within their business, starting out as kind of co-pilots for their employees. But ultimately, that's going to continue to expand into their lines of business and really drive more meaningful results for the field as well. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of that beginning of the generative side as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A major problem is massive numbers of people retiring at record rates, and it's the skilled workforce that's happening, and the ones where that may not be happening as much. The issue is that there's a bubble coming, and people are delaying that, but it's coming. So capturing that tribal knowledge in notes and voice messages that you're recording, historically, there wasn't a whole lot of value you could get from that unstructured data. This new technology allows you to really make a lot out of it, but it takes investment to figure out how to optimize the value.
Well, within the energy and utility industry, and really lots of other industries as well, organizations are doing a lot of work with AI. They're experimenting, they're advancing. But I'm curious, from your point of view, Rich, like what foundational steps do these organizations need to make first to be ready to do all the things that they can do with AI?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, the first one is data. Is they've really got to have a strong data maturity and a culture of data as their foundation. Utilities have a lot of data sources, but they don't necessarily have the data governance and data structures in place to really drive that at an enterprise level. So what we're starting to see is utilities really put the data strategy at the forefront of what it is they're trying to do. And they're not doing it as a central, hey, this is the data group. They're trying to federate it across the business and establish data ownership, data stewardship with the lines of business. So there's co-development and co-ownership happening as a foundation, right? I think that's going to be key because that's going to really help the organization drive higher quality and higher value and obviously more impactful use cases within AI. And then obviously they're starting out small, right? So the key is don't try and boil the ocean. Really start out with some small, maybe lower risk, but higher impactful use cases that are going to help drive the right outcomes. And they can see success from that, learn from it. And ultimately that's going to drive, and accelerate ideas within the organization to even provide more value and extend those use cases into other parts of the business.
Absolutely. I would add on to that. I think thinking about how you're going to do this securely, what's the governance around it, right? We all saw in late 2022, I think it was, when ChatGPT hit the scene, and all of a sudden you had the workforce knowing more about it than the CIO at some point. People were just testing it with all sorts of things, and people throwing corporate IP into it, not realizing now you're just handing that into the public domain. Well, I think that's going to be it already is for those who are early adopters of this. We're seeing them having to come up with that on the fly and even rein in efforts at points. I think the pace that this industry is generally going at, which is excited but measured, allows them to set up those guardrails ahead of time so they're not having to rein it in and they're not putting themselves at risk, but they're establishing the foundation that'll allow them to grow the value long term without having to rein it in down the road.
Eaton is an intelligent power management company dedicated to improving the quality of life and protecting the environment for people everywhere. We are guided by our commitment to do business right, to operate sustainably, and to help our customers manage power, today and well into the future.
Well, Adam, as you're speaking with clients in the energy and utility space, I'm sure you're coaching them a lot on how they identify the pain points and existing business workflows or software applications they have or the processes they have. So what are some areas that you see AI can help them address some of those challenges? How do you do that coaching?
I think it's really, we talk to a lot of the technology leaders about where do they have the best relationship with their lines of business. It's in a lot of areas you have, right? Just like in society generally, we've got an adoption curve for technology. You have that in your lines of business. Rather than going and fighting the uphill battle of trying to, even if there's some great use case that you think will add a ton of value, if the line of business is not interested in working with you, it won't work. It's like any innovation there. And so finding the early adopters is really important, and coming with ideas where, and this is something we work with utilities a lot on, is coming with ideas to help solve problems that IT maybe doesn't always know they have, but we've seen others have. So things like there are planning teams who are forecasting the grid at every meter for the next 10 plus years. It's incredibly compute intensive, and a lot of those folks coming out of COVID were working at home. and a lot of them still, it's at best hybrid. Well, they're transferring these huge files over their home internet and then doing the analysis on their laptops and then transferring them back, and they run into all sorts of issues. They're pressing go on an analysis on Friday, hoping it doesn't crash over the weekend so that Monday they've got an answer. And if you think about if that's the approach, the amount of different simulations you can run is limited. The user experience is so bad, but it doesn't have to be that way. So there's one Midwest utility we worked with where the IT department was asked to buy a bunch of GPU-enabled laptops, gaming laptops that could run these queries much faster, but that wouldn't have solved the network issue. We were able to sit side by side with the infrastructure team and say, well, we've got an idea that would cut out the entire transfer of data, keeps it in the data center, so that means it's much faster. We can centralize the compute, which makes it much more scalable, and so it's even faster than the gaming laptop, and it's accessible by more folks. And we were able to test that in our lab, prove it to the end users, and they were so excited. They started asking, hey, we've got peer groups in our planning organization that would love to use this. Can they try? And I think that's really coming with the idea and not just filling the order for a GPU-enabled laptop. It was a way to then open that door of communication to the line of business and start to have the conversation of, well, if you can help me with that, what else can we make better that's currently not great using that kind of technology?
I think to Adam's point, I think many of these utilities have a lot of projects that are funded through capital means, right? I think it's really important, and a lot of the utilities are doing this, to attach a lot of these AI initiatives and really attach innovation and R&D to those capital projects. I think that's really helping drive a lot of innovation through a lot of their grid modernization initiatives. So, he's spot on, right? There are so many different levers that utilities can leverage that they haven't maybe traditionally leveraged to really start thinking about how this can make a difference for their business.
Yeah. Well, I want to build on that a little bit because I know, from both of you that CapEx is a big part of sort of the strategic mindset of organizations like this, and it has to be. They invest huge amounts of capital in the infrastructure they're building, but they also have an operating expenses side, and so they look across both. So far, it feels like more of the AI experimentation and sort of early pursuits are more on the OpEx side of things, but I'm curious, what do these organizations need to do, Adam, to kind of start thinking about weaving artificial intelligence into their capital expenditures and their more strategic initiatives that take longer periods of time?
It's a great question, and I think it's a lot on the heels of what Rich was talking about. I think when utilities think about building a new transmission line for however many billions of dollars, they think about all the challenges they normally have about rights of way and getting access to be able to build it, and materials and transformers. Our lead times are 2 to 3 years or more right now. So the effort is significant, but and they have to do a lot of analysis to figure out how to run that line and where it can go. And it is a massive asset data cleanup effort every time because they have to know exactly what's there in order to be able to know what to build. But those things, that effort so often ends up where you got all this now clean data and it goes and it sits on a hard drive on a shelf, and 2 years later for another capital program, you're doing that same analysis again. That is the kind of thing that if on a multi-billion-dollar capital program, the cost to get the data right is a tiny fraction, but it's not part of the bid process or it's not something that the business tends to think about. It's one of those issues that has always been there, like the transfer of data over to your home internet and then, pressing go on a laptop and it taking 3 days to run a query. They didn't know to ask for something different. And I think so working this into every capital program, how do we make the underlying system better using the work we're doing in this, the digital systems better, the asset data quality better, the ability to do that analysis better, it will compound over years and over programs, so that the cost of these efforts is lower, the automation you can deliver into the analysis is higher, the quality of the analysis is going to be higher, and even ideas for analytics that we can't even think of because our minds are so blocked to it, because the assumption is that data is wrong and it can't be integrated here, or we can't access this other data. All of that we can start to break down with the dollars of these capital programs, because ultimately that's what is going to get us to a green grid, a carbon neutral grid, a scalable and reliable, affordable grid long term. But it takes thinking differently and weaving the digital into what has been for 120 plus years very much not digital.
Yeah, Adam, that's spot on. I think there are a couple other areas from a capital project perspective where transformation is key, right? And as we talk to the utilities, they're finding that the normal times to actually build out transmission and distribution within the environment can no longer be, is no longer acceptable to move organizations and industry forward, right? Usually a lot of these, they take up, around 5 years to develop and build. They have to really condense and accelerate a lot of their construction and build outs of this capability to provide electricity to a lot of these consumers, like your electric vehicle companies and all the EV charging stations and things that need to be put into place. Data centers and the growth of data center capacity nationwide is at record levels. And they need to be able to connect electricity to a lot of these consumers to really drive industry and move to kind of this modern age of AI. So they're finding that the pressures of that, and they're looking for new ways to drive and accelerate how they're building out infrastructure as well. And a lot of these capabilities are going to be key to that journey.
All right, gentlemen, last question for you. So imagine we're here talking with some executives from the industry, energy and utilities. I'm curious what you would say to them about, like, look, here, 1 or 2 things you really need to be thinking about now, and 1 or 2 things that you'd like to see from their businesses 2, 3, 4, or 5 years from now. Adam, what do you think?
Today, I think it's about some small, quick wins. Mm-hmm. How do you get the inertia, start to chip away at the inertia of change, identifying those early adopters in the business, looking internally, even within IT or within OT or within your group, of what is a challenge that may be possible to address, but meaningful, but not overly ambitious where it's 5, 10, 15 years, or you got to get the entire company involved. Because I think these quick wins will ultimately bring momentum. And I also think starting to get the data right now and the governance right now. It's easy to put it off because the demand or the use of this technology is not massive today, but you will stifle that in the future if you don't take seriously getting asset data quality, your data infrastructure systems, and your overall security and governance set up now. For the future, I think it's really improving the bridges with the lines of business and the partners in the industry, the manufacturers. There are a lot of monolithic systems that run the grid, and that from 150-year-old companies, industrial companies from the 1800s that have evolved and have software platforms and have built those that do that work on the grid, that we need to work with to explain what are the requirements so those can be built long term. And so I think those are really, I'd say, 2 on each side that I think can happen now that would have impacts long term.
Mm-hmm. Rich, how about you?
Yeah, I think the big thing is more cultural, because there are certainly a lot of things that the utilities can do, but I think culturally, more than ever, lines of business leaders, strategy leaders, and technology and innovation organizations, along with security leaders, really have to come together. around these solutions. It's extremely important so that, yes, they need to build small and start getting incremental wins, but it can't be in a silo. It has to be in a combined effort to drive those outcomes and ultimately have that level of visibility across the organization. That's ultimately what's going to drive and accelerate transformation. So they've got to start getting the cultural piece right, because there is a big part of that that's going to be needed to truly transform this industry.
Rich, that's a great point, and I think those quick wins, picking ones where I love the idea of not siloed within a particular group, but really looking at how do we get something we can publish to the rest of the business and show the value of all of us working together, and even show this is possible to do in a secure way. Security will approve this if we do it the right way. We are investing in the infrastructure to enable it. It is something executives care about and will continue to invest in and support. It's an industry that, frankly, right, it's not a lot of risk takers, and there's a lot of roadblocks in general along the way towards transformation in this industry. But showing that there's a willingness to go figure it out and accomplish something in the near term, I think really will open up the Pandora's box, certainly in a good way, towards all these ideas that people maybe would love to see but think are impossible today, and will really, I think that's where the flywheel will really start to pick up.
Well, excellent. Well, thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate you joining us today. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you,
Matt.
It's great.
And thank you for joining us as well. Another great expert session. And this was one of a four-part series we have on energy and utility organizations and how they're thinking about operational technology, lifecycle management, security, and of course, today's topic, AI. We've got lots of great events for you to watch, episodes out on wwt.com/events. You'll see what's coming up on the calendar. You've got access to the back catalog that you can watch on demand at any time. So head to wwt.com and check that out. Always like to hear your feedback. So please do the survey if you get one, or drop us an email. Let us know how we did. And we appreciate you joining us today, and we will see you next time. Thanks for coming.